Nothing can stop this man from his appointed rounds. Nothing can stop us from getting our appointed round from him, even though we are multiple time zones away from this man. Zoom works, and Tom Pelissero is back here in his usual Friday spot on the Rich Eisen Show. How you doing, Tommy P?
Are you guys in Munich or the future? I feel like Brockman's about to beam me up and bring me over there.
Yes, please do. We are in BMW Welt. We can, by the way, we can send an all-electric BMW vehicle for you to be picked up and be here in time. I don't know.
I'll send them a video.
If you can fly, I'm in.
Pretty much. I've seen everything. I've seen all these cars here. Are they working on one of those?
One can fly.
I think they're working on. But yes, we're sitting here in Germany. We got to get you out here the next time. Tom, what's the biggest item in your notebook right now? What do you got that you think is of utmost importance? I very rarely offer a macro question to start and leave it to you to fill in the blanks. Normally ask something more specific, but I'm wondering what is the biggest storyline to you think in your notebook going into Week 10, Tom?
Well, I would say that the biggest storyline in the NFL right now is Dak Prescott. Even though the Cowboys have a lot of ground to make up based on where they are right now in the standings, you're talking about a very significant hamstring injury, which Ian and I reported on Monday. It was more significant than anybody had realized. Our Jane Slater, our colleague at NFL Network, then added the additional details that it's a partial avulsion of the hamstring tendon. Those are really tough injuries. It sounds like Dak wants to avoid surgery if at all possible. He wants to do whatever he can to treat this and get back. But the tenor and the tone coming out of Dallas right now, when you have Stephen Jones on local radio in San Antonio saying that it's going to be at least 4 weeks before Dak can even think about coming back, if not longer, you're starting to talk about, is there a possibility we don't see Dak again this season, which then has all kinds of other tentacles to this. They've obviously got a massive game this week against the Eagles at home, where the Cowboys simply haven't played well going back to the playoff game last season. It's going to be Cooper Rush at quarterback. I've seen debates on other TV networks about should they just play Trey Lance because trade a fourth-round pick for him. Why not find out what you got? Well, they've seen him every day in practice for a year and a half. They've also seen Cooper Rush go 5-1 as their starter in the past. So Cooper Rush, as long as the Cowboys are mathematically in this thing, I would anticipate is going to be the starting quarterback. But the real question is, even if you can survive, when we were talking about these next 4 games, if you can get by, somehow go 3-1, even 2-2 to kind of stay afloat, is Dak Prescott walking through that door in early December? And again, they're continuing to gather medical information about him. We've seen other quarterback situations around the league that also are potentially impactful. Trevor Lawrence, Doug Peterson confirmed today that it seems like it's trending toward him not playing this week against Minnesota, which means, for a 2-7 Jaguars team that's trying to keep some level of hope alive, seems like it's going to be Mac Jones sliding in there. Injuries are a huge part of this, Rich. It's about the timing of them. It's about the volume of them and whether they hit your best players at the wrong times. A lot of the teams that we're seeing right now that are playing really well, the Ravens being an example, they've avoided the injury bug to this point in the season. Other teams have been, banged up. And then for a Cowboys team that, of course, has been playing without Micah Parsons, who may be back. It sounds like he will be back this week. Without DeMarcus Lawrence. CeeDee Lamb hasn't played well. Dak hasn't played well. But now the prospect of going forward without the franchise quarterback of America's team, this has all kinds of implications about exactly where things go from here in Dallas over the next couple of months.
So if Dak doesn't return, let's just throw that out there. We are going to see an offseason in which Jerry Jones needs to make an evaluation on the head coach based on what we've seen to this point. Unless Cooper Rush does something significant to put the Cowboys in the mix, and thus Jerry would be making an evaluation on Mike McCarthy based on the next 7 weeks as well. Or he can just sit there and say, well, I can't really make an evaluation because Dak got hurt. I mean, is that part of the tentacles you're referring to right here, Tom, on that front?
It's about everything in terms of where this franchise goes. Remember, there's a decision one way or another for Jerry Jones because Mike McCarthy's contract is up. So you either need to do a new contract with him or move on and find somebody else to coach the football team. I would say this, regardless of what the external impressions might be, Mike McCarthy and Jerry Jones have been lockstep in this thing. They've been on the same page. Obviously, there's frustrations at times with various people in terms of, the lack of activity through the offseason, how slow it was to get the CD deal done, get the Dak deal done. And we'll never know if those guys, if CD had been in camp from the start instead of showing up the week before the game, if Dak didn't have the contract thing hanging over his head until literally hours before the season opener against Cleveland, does this season go differently? It's hard to say. They've got some of the same flaws. They're starting like 5 or 6 rookies. The offensive line has had significant changeover. Rico Dowdle has shown, I think, some flashes, but they don't have a running back that's really producing at a high level right now. And the defense has been so decimated with injuries. Another group where they were trying to patchwork it and sign defensive tackles off the street a week or two before the season. All that said, there's been really no signs internally here that there's a fission in terms of Jerry and Mike. But yeah, I mean, everybody, again, is going to have to evaluate this thing as we get to the end of the season. And remember, every organization operates differently, and the Cowboys definitely operate in their own unique way. It would not be the first time that Jerry has gotten to the end of the season with a coach who's out of contract and then taken his time figuring out what to do. It happened with Jason Garrett. Jerry Jones said it, after last week's game. He thinks that Mike's a very good coach. He believes in what he's doing. He knows that the work ethic is there. A lot of things haven't gone their way, but let's not overlook the fact they did win 12 games each of the past 3 seasons. Does Jerry Jones, at this point in his career and his life, want to reboot and start over? Does he want to go and try to bring in a new coach? There's obviously going to be tons of Bill Belichick speculation, which I think remains in my mind like a bad fit. Does he want to try to just slap another coach in there and continue it for a couple of years? Do they have to go back to zero? I don't see that being an option. I don't think a full rebuild is an option here, and so you have to take all these things together. Is Mike McCarthy the right coach into 2025 and beyond? I would also tell you this, Rich. I've known Mike a long time. His focus right now, his sole focus is beat the Eagles at home, get a big win where everybody can puff their chests out, feel like we're the Cowboys again, and maybe catch a little bit of a lightning in a bottle here.
Tom Pelissero here on the Rich Eisen Show. We in Germany, he in his Midwestern manse right here on the Rich Eisen Show. Between nothing to see here and absolutely something going on, what is happening in the Chicago Bears locker room, Tom?
Well, there's there've been some strange videos of like the DJ Moore walking off the field after he tweaked something and sitting on the bench while Caleb's still scrambling around. DJ Moore's always had a good reputation in terms of the guy and in the locker room. There's definitely been frustration that he has shown at times here. I think that that's natural when you're not having instant success. And, we know that Caleb Williams even, went to the offensive coordinator early in the season and said, hey, we'd like to, shake some things up. Inevitably, when you're the number 1 pick and you've brought all the pressure on yourself as Caleb has by saying, hey, I want to win 8 Super Bowls and I want to be the greatest ever, when you're sitting there and you're a 500 type football team at the season's midpoint, naturally there's going to be questions about, okay, why isn't it better right now? And those are magnified when you got the guy on the other side in Jaden Daniels, who right now is sitting on top of the NFC East, and they're out there making big moves to bring in Marshawn Lattimore. But I would caution, and I remember talking with TJ and Brockman and the fellas about this when I was out there, early on in the season here. As much as, we wanted to go like, oh, is this another situation where the number 2 pick was the best one and they made a mistake with number 1? Caleb's really talented, and we have seen it at various points this season. When they're, dropping 40 or whatever it was on the Panthers, you're not watching that game and going, oh, man, they'd rather have Jaden Daniels. It's in there, okay, with Caleb Williams here. But from I think, general building dynamic, even outside the locker room, obviously, right now you're falling short of expectations. And even worse, you're watching the teams in your own division who all look like they're headed in the right direction right now. I would say this because inevitably there's going to be questions raised about potential changes in the offseason with Chicago and what happens if they don't turn it around. Their team president, Kevin Warren, is a guy who, going back to his days in Minnesota and then as the Big Ten commissioner, he is very methodical. He always wants to get a complete body of work. He wants to give people every opportunity. We saw it last year when there was a lot of speculation about changes, and then what did they go? 6-2 down the stretch, and the defense got a lot better and to acquire Montez Sweat at the trade deadline. I'm not expecting, even with a loss to the Patriots, which on paper, this is a game the Bears absolutely should win. But even if there's boos, even if they lose, I don't think we're waking up on Monday morning and the building has been exploded. That would not fit with what we know about Kevin Warren, who, again, has a long history in this league. It's not what we know about the McCaskies. They've got to find a way to play better and more consistently. And, of course, also, Rich, I can't help but keep thinking back of what would the lens be that we're looking through if Tyreek Stevenson just is looking toward the play instead of into the stands before the Hail Mary. The standings are different. You beat Washington. Everything feels a little bit different, but we're often captive to the outcome-based analysis, and I think that the Bears are absolutely a function of that.
Yeah, we'd be talking about Caleb Williams' terrific, gutsy fourth quarter where he's getting pounded, and he's getting hammered, and he still got it done is really what we'd be talking about. And then maybe the Arizona loss would be an outlier as opposed to indicative of yet another circumstance where accountability needs to be had.
And maybe you come in differently to that game, too.
Right.
If you win that game in Washington, maybe you're not, the emotional weight of that. Like there's been studies done. I know teams have done studies on this, like walk-off wins or walk-off losses and what happens the following week. There is like analytical data that will show you that there's an emotional toll on either side of that. Even if you have a walk-off win, it can be draining, and teams historically have not played the greatest the following week. So, yeah, I mean, when you spend several days, you got a long flight back from Washington, and you're sitting there looking at number 29 and going, everybody's watching it on their phones on Twitter, like, what in the hell was that? And you got to address it, and you got to bench him, and you got to answer questions about it for days and for the entire week. I'm not saying they would have gone into Arizona and won, because I think it's really impressive right now what Jonathan Gannon's doing, what Drew Petzing's doing with Kyler Murray and getting those young weapons going. They're on top of the NFC West for a reason, but, it's entirely possible, too. We would have seen a better Bears team show up than the one that really stumbled all the way through that game.
So we Tom Pelissero here on the Rich Eisen Show. We see McCaffrey back, right? Juwan Jennings back. We're going to get Debo full strength.
The Christian McCaffrey one's going to be the really interesting one because Kyle Shanahan, who at various points this week he said, well, I'm not going to say anything till kickoff, which isn't really realistic because they have to activate him off IR by 4 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow. And then last night on his KNBR radio show, he was saying, I expect him to be out there. Barring a setback or a surprise or something, I expect him to be out there. Listen, nobody knows for sure on a day-to-day basis on Christian McCaffrey. Everything right now is trending in the right direction. But they thought everything was trending in the right direction prior to week one, and then he came out. It was the Monday night game. It was like Thursday or Friday. He came out in practice, and he had the worst pain that he'd ever felt. There's optimism that he's beyond that he's going to be good to go. The really interesting thing for me to see, and not just because I have him on my fantasy team, will be the division of labor in that backfield. Because when you're talking about a guy who's had Achilles tendonitis, Achilles pain, at one point spreading to his other leg as well, Christian McCaffrey, when he's been at his best, you're not surprised to see him get 25, 28 carries in the game. They really want to do that. Jordan Mason's off the injury report. He's been dealing with the shoulder the past several weeks here. I would imagine, no matter how good Christian McCaffrey is rolling the first time out here against the Bucs, I'm not going to put a number on it because I haven't been told any specific number, but I would imagine that you're trying not to put 100% of the load on him right away, just because even if he's able to go and feels good in the game, you don't have any data to tell you what's he going to feel like the next day, the next week, and for what they hope is going to be another long stretch run.
So bold-face names that are in danger of missing this weekend's action. Trevor Lawrence would headline that. Who else is in that mix, Tom?
We know Keon Coleman's not going to go for the Bills. Amari Cooper limited in practice again today. So, Bills receiver core that they had certainly, pumped a lot of resources into, that's going to be a question mark headed into this week, and exactly who Josh Allen's throwing the ball to. It could be a heavy Dalton Kincaid game. We'll see how some of that shakes out. I'm interested to see in the Germany game, and you may have more info than I do at this point, Rich, of do we get our first taste of Jonathan Brooks, the top running back who was drafted? Again, am I interested because I've stashed him on a fantasy team all year? Maybe. But also because they just gave Chuba Hubbard a ton of money.
Yes.
And now you got Jonathan Brooks, who was a highly drafted player. I'd be interested to see what he gets out.
How about let me help you here? Since you help me all the time, Tom, let me help you because I spoke to Dave Canales earlier today.
I'm listening.
Jonathan Brooks is in the country of Germany right now. And I think they're just going to test it out on the turf and see what goes on Sunday. It does appear that he is a game-time decision, Tom Pelissero. But if there was no chance of him playing, they would have left him in the United States. They did not. He is here in the country of Germany. You're welcome.
Well, I'm a Chuba Hubbard owner, so I'm very
Chuba Hubbard, I will tell you this. Well, I don't want to waste any more of my precious Tom Pelissero real estate, but I'll tell you what I said about Chuba Hubbard. But there you go. I'm giving you information. But you could basically say, but you help me with this, guys. Is that look on Tom Pelissero's face saying, "Rich, I knew he went to Germany"?
Tom,
I'm not telling you anything you don't know, right, Tom?
No, you're telling me it's a game time decision, which means that I'm going to have extra work to do at like 6 a.m. Central on Sunday to make sure when we come on for the Insider segment on game day kickoff, I know whether or not Jonathan Brooks is playing.
Look at him working in his own self-promotional, although makes it sound like he's just a company man promo right there. It's not your first rodeo. Yeah, just make sure you get your rest Saturday night. Who else? Is there anybody else that's out there that we should throw out there? Names? Doesn't have to be on your fantasy team, but anybody else?
The Micah Parsons thing will be significant, and to what extent they are willing to kind of cut.
What about A.J. Brown? What about A.J. Brown in that game? That's his guy. What about A.J. Brown in that game?
Everything seems like it's trending the right way for A.J. Brown. Obviously, he had a knee. It's more or less, from what I've heard, it's like a contusion or a mild sprain. It's not something major here. They've been cautious in the past with A.J. Brown. We saw that during his last absence here. Jalen Hurts, I know, missed practice yesterday. They said it was rest. Then Nick Sirianni in his press conference today said something about an ankle, and then was quickly reminded it said rest. Doesn't seem like there's anything necessarily there. But so you got your quarterback and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith all on the injury report. I would anticipate, in terms of Brown and Devontae Smith, knowing the Eagles' history, they're probably both going to be listed as questionable for the game. I haven't seen if we've gotten the final report here. Jalen Hurts, as far as we're aware, going down there against the Cowboys and Micah Parsons. Hopefully it's not an ankle, because he's going to have Micah Parsons probably chasing him around.
Well, lots of work for you, so tape your rests, Tom, in advance of your of your Sunday. Thanks for the time here. Thanks, appreciate it.
Enjoy it, fellas.
We are. Tom Pelissero, everybody. He there, we in Germany, right here on The Rich Eisen Show. Catch The Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku Channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.